Hi there, my name's Tim. I've got my cup of tea out because this is not going to be just a book review, but also a little bit of a discussion as I say my thoughts. But one of the challenges that the wheel spanned for me this month to read was a library book slash audiobook. And I thought I knew I wouldn't know what I would get from the library, so I thought let's start on an audiobook. And I found online an audiobook of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. A book that is famous, part of the Chronicles of Narnia, written in the 50s, 1950, I think. C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien were very good friends. C.S. Lewis lectured at Oxford and Cambridge in English, and it's a very famous book. I've seen the film, but I'd never read the book before. And part of that is because another thing that's probably almost as famous as C.S. Lewis being friends with J.R.R. Tolkien was that he was a very devout Christian. And the Chronicles of Narnia are a Christian allegory story. You know, it's a Christian story under a veil of fantasy for children. And I'm not a religious person. My mum definitely isn't a religious person, and so I think she didn't want me to read these books. And even when we adopted our kids and we were talking about it, my mum was like, "Don't read them; those books. They're really Christian. Don't read them." So I listened to this, and it's going to be a bit of a book review, and then about how Christian it was. Um, Being Christian isn't bad. Not being Christian isn't good. This is just an impartial view. I'm personally not religious, but I don't judge people who are. Um, and I don't think anyone should really judge anyone else on that kind of front. Um, First of all, the audiobook was read by Michael York, who, for a certain generation of people, is the main character, the main man in Cabaret. And for another generation of people is Basil Exposition from the Austin Powers films. But his narration was fantastic in this. It was clear and concise, and like he's got great enunciation. He gave all the different characters great voices, but he also it added to one of the things that I really enjoyed was the authority in the narrator, in the narrative voice. You felt like you were being told a story, read a story, rather than now books generally are far more putting the person in the action and it's happening around you. This one feels like you're being told a story, and there's fourth wall breaks all the time. Um, this I loved this story. I thought it was so good. I listened to it only over 2 3 days driving to work, doing washing up, things like that. Um, which is what audiobooks I think are perfect for. It's very short. It's very concise. Apart from if he's talking about food, C.S. Lewis obviously was a big foodie because you get like a whole description. You get more of a description about the food that they ate than about the battle. And seemingly as the battle in the film takes up like half an hour, and um, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the children's dynamics with each other. Um, it is full of childlike wonder. I like the fact that Lucy, who is the youngest of the four Pevensey children, is the she's the most point of view character. And it's about her seeing things that are magical and are real, and no one else believing her for a bit. Um, I'm gonna do spoilers a bit because it's a very well known story. But Edmund, who is convinced by the White Witch with some Turkish delight, I thought it was more he was, he met her first, and so he was just he was just drawn to her because he was a bit naive and susceptible. But no, he's a real rotter. He's really not nice. He's not kind from the beginning, and he goes through a big journey in the book. One of my favourite moments is when Peter just tells him just flat out to shut up, which is that happens a couple of times, and it's great fun. Um, but yeah, I do think this particular is a classic, and I can see why because it's just it has that wonder. Um, you can, as a child, you can put yourself in this world, and it's just truly magical, and it's not bogged down by the real adult world. It's just pure adventure and enjoyment. Um, so now let's move on to the Christianness of it, and so Aslan is Jesus. He dies, he comes back, he makes a noble sacrifice. He then disappears quietly. Um, I would think as a kid, you probably wouldn't really pick up on that too much, because the story is about heroic sacrifice, which is a strong theme anyway, even without the religious ideology. There's a lot of they only call the humans sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, which is interesting. Especially if you were a kid and didn't really know who Adam and Eve were, you'd be like, "What's going on here?" But they are the only humans in the book, so you can understand why maybe there's a new term for it. Um, but I would say this story, the themes of it are more general, you know, be good, be kind, than truly religious. I would say this one um, is is relatively clear of that. It works as a standalone, very much. Um, there is, you know, they end up back in the real world, and they go, oh, you know, how will we get back? And oh, you can't go through the water again. Like it works as a standalone, and I think I gave this 5 stars to listen to it, um, because I just really enjoyed it, and for me, the the Christianity, the religious undertones, I think are they're there if you know how to spot them, and maybe if you spot them as an adult or if you've heard about them, you're kind of looking for them. But I don't feel indoctrinated by reading this book or by listening to it. One thing that my favourite part of it is that authoritative narrative voice, which I think Michael York's narration helped definitely with that. Um, and Yeah, it is. The one thing that stands out more for me more than the religious bit is the sexism of it. Susan's not really given that much to do, um, and they meet Father Christmas, and they get given stuff, and Father Christmas is like, here's a dagger and here's a bow, but you won't fight. It's ugly if women fight. And I'm like, that's not great, especially because they're then not in the battle anyway, so you didn't even need to say that line because they're off doing something else. So for me, actually, the sexism of the time, I don't think it, but the sexism stands out more than the Christianity. But I think if you've got children, I think this book is fine to read to them without them feeling religiously indoctrinated. But those are just my thoughts. Anyway, let me know in the comments below if you've read this, if you've heard this narration by Michael York, which I think is brilliant. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye.